All right, so we're going to talk about the circular flow chart today in your macroeconomics class. It's really easy, so let's just get right into it. There's not much to really. There's a lot of cool stuff here, and it's gonna seem very obvious once you see it. Okay, so the circular flow is a chart. The chart is gonna look something like this. Let's actually make this a little bit smaller. So it's gonna have one part here, one part here, one part here, and one part here. Okay. Now, these two boxes are the players. So this is we'll have the left side as firms. So the firms and industries like Apple, any businesses that produce stuff, and this is the households. Okay. So households, where it's us, the people living in house. It's us, the people who are actually consuming things. Okay. Up on the top here are the markets. So the top run right here is called the factor/resource market, and then the bottom here is called the product market. Okay. So why is this called the circular flow? Well, because everything that happens between these four things are completely circular, and they go completely full circle, and it's brilliant, guys. Okay, so let's look at what's going on here. We start off with the households. Let's start here. Okay, this is where we're going to start. What do the households provide to the factor/resource market? And the best thing that I would do to remember this, so if you're going to remember this, is what I call LLCE. Okay, land. So we're gonna write it down, just to keep a note here. It'll be L is land, L is labor, C is capital, and E is entrepreneurial. Okay, so these are our LLCEs. So what do I mean? Well, households it's us, it's the people. So we can be workers. We provide land, so we give them rent, and we give them, they pay us rent for the land that we allow them to use. We give them capital. We give them, as entrepreneurs, who combined all these things, we create businesses that produce these units, and etc. and etc. So households give the factor market or the resource market land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial. We give them the resources that firms are going to need to use to produce things. Okay, and in exchange for the LLCE, we're actually getting returned our some things, because there always needs to be an exchange. We're not just going to provide them LLCE for no reason. We're going to return. They're going to give us back things in money. So we call money in the form of rent. So for land, wages for labor, interest for capital. And so, and that's pretty much it. Nothing really for entrepreneurial, unfortunately. It's maybe a combination of all these things. So in exchange for our LLCE, we get rent, wages, interest for what we provide them, right? And that's the form in money. Okay. Now, what does the factor market do with LLCE? It just continues to give them LLCE. So the factor market then transfers the LLC that the households gave to the firms. Okay. Now, in this case here, what do firms give in exchange for the LLCE that we gave them? And and very simply put, it's just money again. So this purple, everything purple on this chart will be money, and it's money, but it's in the form of costs. It's business costs. So we're gonna pay, in exchange for the LLC, we're gonna pay the costs of the firms to the factor and resource market, because all the ingredients that firms need to purchase are just costs, okay? And of course, those costs then turn into the rent, wages, and interest that we were talking about earlier. Okay. So in exchange for the factors of production, and sometimes people actually, maybe in your courses, this might be called the factors of production. But it's really just LLCE, so you can think of it as LLCE and you're perfectly fine. Okay, continuing on, now let's look at the bottom half of this little market circular flow chart. So firms give the product market, what do the firms give? And the answer to that is that the firms simply give goods and services. They produce goods and services, G plus S. Okay, so with all the factors of production, after they're paying their costs, they use those factors of production to build stuff to produce goods and services. You know, like a pizza or a bakery produces pizzas and breads and all these pastries and all that stuff, and they give it to the product market. And of course, all that comes in exchange is money again, and this is obviously in the form of revenue. Okay, so businesses and firms, they gain revenue in exchange for giving goods and making goods and services to the product market. And of course, the product market just gives the households goods and services as well. So they provide, this is where households, they're going to buy goods and services, and in exchange for that, it's going to be what we call expenditures, consumer expenditures. Because the households are going to, pay for the products, right? They're not going to just get the goods and services for free. That's not how it works. And so they're going to have to pay for their expenditures. Now, but wait, where? Here's the question: where did the households get the money for the expenditures that they needed to buy the goods and services? Well, they got it from the rent, wages, and interest that they got in exchange for their LLCE. And in fact, in exchange for their LLCE, which also created the factors of production needed for firms, which also went to the market, and it's back to the households. And so there is your circular flow. Everything comes back together. The rent and wages and interest that the households received were, that were given in exchange for the LLCE for firms to use to produce goods and services, are also used as consumption expenditures for the goods and services that they just worked in exchange for. So everything comes back together. Now, I want you to, and quick note here, these two markets here, they don't have to be physical places. When I say market, it can be like a conceptual or a non-interacting market. For example, Amazon, you don't really interact with the seller in any sense. But if you went to like Ralph's, or if you went to like one of those Chinese markets in China where you negotiate prices, well, yeah, that's an interactive market. But when we're talking about markets here, we're just talking about places where exchanges of resources and stuff and goods and services can actually happen. They're not physical markets, guys. Don't worry about that. So we see that everything is a circular flow. There's a constant exchange that the things that the households provided to the factor market, and the factor market gave back to them for, will eventually come back in the sense that they're just going to pay the product market with their expenditures, which gives revenue to the firms, which gives the factor market costs, which gives the households rent, wages, and interest. And you pretty much get the idea that it's a circular flow. Everything is going to come back together. The stuff we use, the stuff that firms paid for the costs or factors of production, are given to households so that the households can spend expenditures on the product that they just paid costs for. So you see how amazing this really is. Now there's one more part of the circular flow that's actually completely missing from a lot of chapters, and that's the government. What does the government do? Okay, so I'm going to make this part a little bit smaller because I'm going to need space. Okay, so the government has a role, and it is considered the third player of the circular flow. And here's how it works. The government provides both so the government, okay. In terms of the money, firms and households pay taxes. Okay? So they pay taxes to the government. Okay? Firms pay taxes for the business, households pay income taxes, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Right? In exchange, the government will provide firms with subsidies, so they will subsidize firms, and in exchange, with the households, they're going to give government services. So public services, national parks, police, maybe even, scholarships for education, lots of things that just generally require the government to take action on. These public government services are the things that are offered to households in exchange for their taxes. Now, what about the markets? Well, the factor market still gives the government LLCE. So government workers, politicians, those are all people at the end of the day. And so, the factor market will provide the government with LLCE, and all that the government is going to go in exchange for is just tax revenue. Okay, so money. Once again, there's always going to be exchange of some form of money. We just call them different things. So tax revenue is given to the factor market. And lastly, what about the product market? Well, the product market gives the government goods and services as well. And the government in exchange will also provide tax revenue. Or sometimes people call it government expenditures. Okay, so government expenditures will be given type of money in exchange for government's goods and services. Okay, so this is your circular flow. This is everything you're going to need to know. Now, I know it looks pretty insane, but notice something very interesting here. The top half of the circular flow, if you look at this top half right here, notice that it's just, it's LLCE here and LLCE there. And the bottom half, the green part, is just G plus S and G plus S. So if I was redrawing this, thing, all I have to remember are the players, so households, firms, factor market, product market. This is just LLCE. This is also LLCE. This is just money in the form of costs. This is also money in the form of costs, just whatever that is. But the bottom here is just G plus S. And this is also G plus S. So you can kind of remember the top half as the LLCE half and the bottom half as the G plus S half, right? And you notice that, all the money flows in one direction, right? This direction, the clockwise direction. And then the LLCE, the factors of production, the goods and services, go in the counterclockwise direction. So just certain things to help you memorize. And a lot of the circular flow and a lot of the things that you're going to cover in this chart are almost common sense, and you can kind of figure it out as you go. You can be like, oh, what do households and firms pay to the government? Well, we pay taxes. And so you can figure that part out. Now, this central government part isn't really included in a lot of curriculums, but I think it's important to mention because the government does have a role in the circular flow. And so this is all you're going to need to know, guys. This is everything you're going to need to review for the circular flow. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.